So, good evening once again to all the students. And today's session is, as I had declared earlier, it is on how to read better. People, please understand that your reading ability to a great extent decides the speed at which you solve the questions in the VARC section. So we all know that calculation plays a very important role in quant and LRDI. If you are good at calculations, and if you can calculate things at a fast pace, you can perform better. At least you have that. You can save on time. Same goes with your VARC as well. If you can read better and you can read faster, you can devote more time to the questions. You will have more time to work on the questions. So yes, quick reading is very important, but this should not happen at the cost of comprehension. I mean, you start reading so fast that you miss the comprehension entirely. So there has to be a balance between reading quickly and reading at such a pace such that you understand things. So here, the first and the most important point, people, you have to keep in mind is always focus on the key ideas of a sentence. So before I explain to you what it means to focus on the key ideas, I want everyone to read this short paragraph. And in every sentence, we are going to pick the key ideas, because this short paragraph, it has sentence number 1 ends here, and then sentence number 2 ends here, sentence number 3 ends here, and this is almost like a parajumble. So you have almost 4 sentences, and they are long sentences, right? So now I want you to pick the key idea from this short paragraph. And how would you go about it? So everyone can just take some time and try to find the key ideas. Now I have given some notes of caution. I have highlighted here that while reading, you have to ignore the additional information that comes in the sentence, and you have to focus on the main subject and the main verb of the sentence. They carry the critical information. Now, main subject and main verb, that is what I have always been highlighting time and again, that you as a reader have to focus on the main subject and the main verb. Now look at the first sentence, people. As socialism and central planning gave way to resurgent market forces in the second half of the 20th century, three great economists were brought in the ideological wilderness. What is the main idea of this sentence? If I have to, if I'm writing my mock and I see this sentence, what is the key element that I would extract from this sentence? It says, as socialism and central planning gave way to resurgent market forces in the second half of the 20th century. Now this is basically the subordinate clause. As something was happening, something happened. So the subordinate clause is not an important element of a sentence. It might have importance, but this is something which I know is basically giving some kind of introduction, so I would not bother about it. My chief concern is three great economists were brought in the forefront, or were brought in the three great economists were brought in from the ideological wilderness. That means basically three great economists came to the forefront from somewhere. I don't know how. And what do I expect in the next sentence? Who are these great economists? So it said Friedrich Hayek. Again, there is an additional information. Friedrich Hayek was later to inspire the free market policies. He also inspired Milton Friedman, right? A fierce advocate of free markets and monetarism. And now Mr. Friedman has given his name to a biennial prize, which was awarded on May this to Peter Bauer. So again, this is an additional information. So what am I doing while reading the sentences? I am actually trying to find the key information. It says here three great economists were brought in the wild, were brought in from the ideological wilderness. And then the author says, and I know I'm expecting that the three economists would basically be the names that the author would declare in the subsequent sentences. So he says Friedrich Hayek was later to inspire the free market policies, and he also inspired Milton Friedman. So that means he's likely to be the second economist. And then it says here, and now Mr. Friedman has given his name to the third one. So what basically has is the key idea of this entire paragraph, that three great economists towards the second half of the 20th century came to the forefront, and they were A, B, and C. What did A do? What did B do? Who were they? Where did they come from? I should not bother about it in the first reading of the paragraph. That is what we mean by looking for the broad ideas and not focusing too much on the details. Now, things like, Friedman has given name to the biennial prize for the advancement of liberty. That's fine. But I know that Friedman is the second guy who came to the forefront, and the third guy is Mr. Bauer, and the first guy is Mr. Friedrich Hayek. So my suggestion is that when you read something, you have to, yes, good evening, you have to keep away from the minute details of the passage, and that you will gradually develop intuitively. So I told you, ignore the additional information and focus on the main subject and the main verb. They carry the critical information. So in this example here, in the second sentence, what is the main subject, main verb? Friedrich Hayek was later to inspire the free market policies. In other words, Friedrich Hayek is one of the economists. Whether he inspired someone and what did he do and whom did he inspire, that is fine. I'm not much bothered about it. Similarly, if I go to the next slide here, and the next slide says, always focus on the key ideas of a sentence, for example. So what I have done here, this is how I would read. This is the sentence that you see here given, and this is the things that I have removed in the paragraph. In order to explain the socio-economic achievement in the face of the disadvantage due to racial discrimination of Chinese and Japanese immigrants to the US and the descendants, socialists have typically applied either. So, in order to do something, what is it? In order to explain the socio-economic achievement. That means to explain this, sociologists have typically applied either culturally based or structurally based theories, but not together. In the face of disadvantage due to racial discrimination of Chinese, Japanese, fine, this is great. It is concerned with something on discrimination, but to explain the socio-economic achievement of immigrants, sociologists have applied culturally based or structurally based theories, but never. So by canceling these things, I am trying to tell you that these are some of the things which you can basically ignore without paying much attention. So you can simply say, to explain the socio-economic achievement of immigrants, sociologists have applied either culturally based or structurally based theories. That means to study something, there are two theories that being applied, but the two were never applied together. So two theories to study something, one theory is X, the other is Y, but the two were never applied together. So when I read something, I try to create a mental map. By mental map, I mean to say that I will not give name to each and everything, but I would just create a flow chart. That socioeconomic issues have been is being tried by the sociologists are trying to study the socioeconomic achievement of immigrants, and for that they have two approaches, but they have never used the two approaches. Now those two approaches might be having a name, that is fine, but should I try to remember the name? I mean, I can say X approach, Y approach. X approach is like this and Y approach is this. I can come back again to the passage to get the name of the approaches when I'm solving the question. So the point here is, people, don't try to burden your memory with too much of information that you think you would find difficult to retain. You must know where exactly the information is there in the passage. So this is basically the passage. I know this is the first paragraph, I know this is the second paragraph, and I know this is the third paragraph. I must know that the two theories are mentioned in the first paragraph. The first theory is discussed in the second paragraph, and the second theory is discussed in the third paragraph. I must know the position, the exact location where the theories are being discussed. But apart from that and beyond that, there is no need of anything else. So what do we learn from this? We always have to ensure that we pick the critical ideas. And what is the critical idea in this entire paragraph? That sociologists are trying to explain socioeconomic achievement by using some approach. Whether in the face of disadvantage due to racial discrimination of this, it's immigrants, we know which place, where immigrants coming from, which city, that's fine. But what is the key idea? That they are trying to study socioeconomic achievement, and they have typically used two approaches, but not both together. So that simplifies everything. We have to simplify things so that we are able to retain the information. And that simplification will help us retain the broad ideas. And once we go to the questions, we would be able to keep that broad idea in mind and then pick the question and then come back to the passage depending on which question has come from which area of the passage. So let's go to the third slide. I'm just highlighting what exactly I would have done. It's very difficult to, write something about how to read better, but we can only take examples and implement those things. Now look at this here. Again, a similar example I have taken. It says, even in the midst of its resurgence as vital tradition, many sociologists have viewed the current form of powwow, a ceremonial gathering of Native Americans, as a sign that tribal culture is declining. What exactly is happening in the paragraph? Many sociologists have viewed the current form of something as a sign that tribal culture is declining. What is the equation? Sociologists have viewed something as decline of something. So the current form of something has been viewed as decline in tribal culture. So what I'm doing, I'm codifying everything. And what is the key element here? Sociologists have viewed X. They have viewed the current form of X as what? The decline of tribal culture. That's fine. Again, I have come to the main subject, main verb. This is basically the subordinate clause. You have to remove the subordinate clause. I have been repeating this all the time in my classes that you have to remove the subordinate clause from the sentences. So when I go to the subordinate clause, I kick them out. It's not required. So I remove this. Sociologists have viewed the current form of powwow, right? Okay, something. Yes, we need to cut down the modifiers because the more you get into the modifiers, the more time you will waste and you will come to nothing. Ignore the additional information. What is the additional information? The additional information that comes through the subordinate clauses. All the subordinate clauses in your sentences, they give additional information. So in the first reading, I should not try to focus on them. I should rather focus on the main clause, which has the main subject and the main verb. That's the reason I have been always highlighting the importance of grammar. So if I am a reader, I would say, okay, sociologists are viewing the form of powwow as what? As a decline of tribal culture. How simple I have made it by ignoring this thing, by ignoring what powwow is. Powwow might be something, but as far as understanding the passage is concerned, I know it is a ceremonial gathering of Native Americans. That's fine, whatever it might be. But the important thing is that the sociologists are viewing the current form of it as a decline of tribal culture. So when I codify like this, I basically summarize the entire paragraph in, let's say, 2 or 3 sentences. And it is far easy for me to remember 2-3 sentences. That's why I have been emphasizing that remove the modifiers. Because if you don't remove the modifiers, you will always be taking too much in your memory than you would be able to hold. Now take the next slide. There is one more this here. Now look at this. This is a long paragraph. I mean, it is the first paragraph of a passage. And look what it says. Most office workers assume that messages they send to each other via electronic mail are as private as a telephone call or a face-to-face meeting. Okay. So office workers assume that messages are private or, so what is the code here? The officers assume that, or the office workers assume that message that they send is basically private. So the privacy part is very important. And the workers assume that the message they send via what? Electronic mail are private. So messages via electronic mail are private. This has been assumed by the workers. The assumption is wrong. So one assumption is wrong as per the passage. Although it is illegal in many areas for an employer to eavesdrop on private conversation, even if they take place on a company, there are no clear rules governing electronic mail. So there is an assumption that the conversation is safe, this assumption is wrong because there are no clear rules governing mail. In fact, the question of how private electronic mail transmission should be has emerged as one of the more complicated legal issues of the electronic age. So basically the entire privacy thing has become a legal issue. And look at how I have eliminated things. I have said office workers assume that the message they send to each other are private. That assumption is wrong. Although it is illegal for an employer to eavesdrop, there are no clear rules governing mail. In fact, how private electronic mail transmission should be is a complicated legal issue. So there is an assumption about privacy of mails, which assumption is, the assumption is wrong because there are no rules. and it's a legal issue. It's a big legal issue. So what I have captured here, I have captured the core subjects of the sentence. In fact, the question of how private electronic mail transmission should be a legal issue. The mail transmission is a legal issue. There are no clear rules. Okay. The assumption is wrong. And what is the next thing? People think that this is, so there is an assumption which is wrong. There are no clear rules, and this is a complicated legal issue. So the entire paragraph has been clubbed into 4 or 5 words. And what are those 5 words? That the messages sent via something are as they are secured, but the assumption is wrong. There are no clear rules, and there are many legal issues pertaining to this. Simple. That is what we mean by simplification. If you don't simplify, if you don't codify, then you would be reading and you would never reach the proper comprehension. Let's take now one more example here, and we will go to the next slide. See what I have been asking you to summarize the important ideas. And by the important ideas, we mean that the critical things that are coming in this is the critical thing. This assumption is wrong. What is the assumption? The assumption that the messages via electronic mail are private. And then it says, although it is illegal in many areas for an employer to eavesdrop on private conversations or telephone calls, even if they take place, there are no. So what is the key thing? There are no clear rules governing electronic mail. And this is the most important idea. So if I'm a reader, I would focus here. I would not much focus here. Okay, whatever they are writing, it's fine. In fact, the question on how this should be is basically a complicated legal issue. So the whole thing is basically a legal issue. What? The privacy, the rules, and everything. And then I will go to the next paragraph, and I will try to connect the paragraph, and then I would get the broad idea. And that broad idea is that there are no clear rules governing electronic mail. There must be rules, and the rules must be pertaining to these things. And then I will go to the passage and read the first question. Now look at this. Now there is one more example of how to summarize the important points of the paragraph. I have been repeating, and many of you have been asking to me repeatedly, sir, how to summarize paragraph. So in fact, there is, in CAT, we have ParaSummary questions. That how would you, when I say ParaSummary, you have to basically pull the most critical information. Now look at this here. I have the Okapi, and it is something, has presented zoologists with a number of difficult questions since they first learned of its existence in 1900. So what is the key thing that we get here? Something has presented difficult questions to someone. Something has presented difficult questions to someone. That something is O, and that someone is zoologists. Since they first learned of its existence, do you think this is very important? This is not important. This is just additional information that is wasting my attention. I mean, that is capturing my attention, and I'm wasting my time unnecessarily reading it. The Okapi, whether it is X, whether it is Y or Z, I will come to that later on. I'm not bothered about it. But the important thing is it has presented zoologists difficult questions. The first was how to classify it. And the second is, so the first was how to classify it. I got this one. Because it was horse-like in dimension and bore patches of stripes. So why should I unnecessarily bother about it? But I must know that the first difficulty was classifying it, and this is basically explaining how that difficulty emerged. The Okapi's rightful place within the giraffe family is confined by its skin-covered horns. Okay, so basically this is about, the discussion entirely is happening about what? How to classify it. It was classified as X, but further studies showed that it is Y. So my XY, I'm making X and Y as the variable, right? Why should I unnecessarily put X as some kind of noun and noun phrase and Y as some kind of thing? I know that the Okapi presented zoologists many difficult questions. The first one was how to classify it. Initially, they classified it as something, and later on, after some further study, they classified it as something else. So what was the first classification? The horse family. What was the second classification? The giraffe family. It becomes so simple. And that is how we say that I'm extracting the critical information. The difficulty was of classification. So initially it was classified as the horse family. Later on the study showed that it belongs to the zebra family. That's fine. Or giraffe family, whatever family. Let's go to the next paragraph. So my point is that the details should be just kicked out. The critical information should be just remembered, collected, extracted, and then you go to the next paragraph. And that's how it works. In most of the RCs, sir, Vibul says, sir, being amateur, sometimes we may overlook important critical information. People, you will get that by practice. See, I have today in the morning, I was going through these passages. I just picked it for the session. Sir, please, can you explain one more time for me, please? I mean, see, Rahul, what I am trying to explain here is that when you read the first sentence here, the first sentence says that Okapi is O. It presented zoologists a number of difficult questions. The first question was how to classify it. ठीक है. Because it was horse-like in dimension and bore patches of striped hide similar to zebras, zoologists first classified it as a member of horse family. So what is the critical information here? The first classification was of the horse family. But what is the extra information? Why it was classified like that? So what is more important? How it was, I mean, what was the classification done? The horse family. Why it was done? That's an additional information. People, I'm repeating this. Kick out the additional information. Don't bother much about it. Subordinate clauses always give you additional information. Look at this sentence. Yes, our first reading of the RC should be like this. That is precisely what I have been trying to emphasize, that you have to ignore some of the things which are, unnecessary taking your attention. If there is a question that what was the confusion pertaining to the first classification, then we can come here and we can check the answer. So the Okapi presented difficult questions. The first was about its classification. The initial classification was that it's from the horse family, but further studies showed that it is more likely to be from the giraffe. People say this will come by, it's not mathematics where 2 plus 2 equals to 4. You will have to develop that knack gradually. And then you will come to the point where you can say, yes, this is basically the key idea that is being discussed. And once you have done that, you have done much of the hard work now. I mean, you have basically gone through much of the good things. Now, let's go to the next thing. Now, I will take some of the CAT. Now, this is a CAT passage. This paragraph has came in one of the CAT passages, and I have borrowed that paragraph from that passage. Now, if you look at this entire 3 paragraph, there is nothing that is being discussed here. The author is simply repeating the same information time and again. Recently, I spent several hours sitting under a tree in my garden with the social anthropologist, Mr. William Ury, who specializes in the art of negotiation. Fine. So, the author spent time with Mr. Ury, and he specializes in what? The art of negotiation. So what are the key points? Mr. Ury is an anthropologist. If there is a question, then we can come to the ignored part later on, people. See, understand, you are going to read the question after all, right? That is what I'm saying. Why are you bothered about the question in the very first reading? It's quite possible. See, understand, people, even if when you go to the question, you will realize that the first question is about what? The first question is about the classification. And then you can come back. See, my point, people, I'm trying to repeat is that you have to save time. I mean, I'm just trying to make you a better reader. So if you think that my own reading style is paying dividends, there is no need to change that reading style. My only concern is that if you are taking too much time to read, it is basically because you are getting into too much of details. So this is the first reading that I am talking about. When you have finished the first reading, then you have to go to the question. And then depending on the question, whether the question is asking you a specific detail, whether the question is asking you a broad information, whether the question is asking you some kind of, then depending on the question, you have to again go back and reorient your. But the reason I'm emphasizing on the first reading is because if the first reading is done quickly, you will get a firm grasp or a broad understanding of the passage, and then you can take a call whether you want to attempt the passage or not. So if you just take, let's say, 1 minute or 2 minutes to read the passage and to read all the questions, by investing 2 minutes, you can take a call whether this is basically your cup of tea or not. But if you take 5 minutes to just check whether it is your cup of tea or not, you have wasted 3 minutes. So my point is the first reading has to be broad such that you get the overall picture. Then you have a look at the questions, check the questions, what kind of questions have come. Are they inference based? Are they trying to get factual information from you? Are they based on, too much of inferential things from specific areas of the passage? And then you jump to which paragraph where the question has come from, and then you use the option elimination to arrive at the answer. So there is a process in attempting the RC. The first thing I would suggest here is, first is read the passage for what? Broad understanding. As quickly as possible, just check whether it is really, within your grasp or not. Once you have read the passage for broad understanding, you have to check the questions, see the questions. Now the questions can be of many kinds. The questions might be asking you to check for information and data in the passage. The questions might be asking you about inference and this and that, tone and all. And then once you have seen the question, once you have seen the questions, you can check, okay, fine, this passage is very much doable. You know that it is doable. Check the first question. What is the subject matter of the question? When I say subject matter, means what exactly is the question wanting? And once you have seen what the question wants, you have to go back to the passage. And now since you have gone through the passage, you know that this question can be answered from first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph, fourth paragraph. Which paragraph has it come from? Or which paragraph might be having the answer, if it is coming from a certain paragraph. And then you have the options A, B, C, D. Start comparing the options and check from the passage where exactly, and then you come to the process of finding the answer. So you should spend more time here, less time here, because the lesser the time you spend here, the more the time you will have to invest here. And that is where you will get the marks. You don't get the marks for reading the passage 3 times and wasting 5 minutes. I don't say you don't read the passage, but I say you don't read it so carefully that it takes 5 minutes for you to read the passage. And that is precisely what I have been trying to emphasize on. I have been trying to say all the while that if you read the way we have been reading the earlier slides, you will find that you are able to save time. And that's the practice. That's the reason why grammar. Now look at this. Look at this paragraph here. It came in one of the CAT RCs. It says, recently I spent hours sitting under a tree, where you spend time with anthropologist who wrote something. Fine, you spend time with someone, that's fine. That is not the critical idea here. He captivated me with the theory that tribalism protects people from. So the author was captivated by something. This is more important than how the author spent time, whether he was sitting under a mango tree or a banana tree. That is what we mean by spotting the critical ideas and ignoring all the other nonsense going on in the passage. So the author says he spent time with an anthropologist who captivated the author with the concept of tribalism that protects people from fear of change. He explained that the pillars of tribalism that humans rely on for security to always counter any significant culture or social change. What is broadly speaking here going on? That tribalism protects people from accepting changes. In this way, he said change is never allowed to happen too fast. Technology, for example, is a pillar of society. Urey believes that every time technology moves in a radical direction, another pillar such as religion or nationalism will grow stronger. In effect, the traditional or familiar will assume greater importance to compensate for the new and untested. What exactly is happening right every now and then? That whenever there is change, change is obstructed. If you read this entire paragraph, I can sum up like this: that the author spent time with Mr. William Urey, who is a Harvard professor and he is known for something. But the main point is that they were discussing, the author believes, the anthropologist believes that tribalism holds back people from embracing social changes. Human tribes avoid rapid change. That leaves people insecure and frightened. That means basically tribalism holds back people from accepting changes. Can I say this entire paragraph is nothing but that simple one sentence? I don't say that every paragraph is going to be like this or will be like this, but at least I can somehow extract the critical information. But we have all heard that nothing is as permanent as change. Nothing is guaranteed. Pithy expressions to be sure, but no more than cliche. So you have to understand, pithy expressions means what and no more than cliche. The author says, that these are good expressions, but they are just cliche. As Yuri says, people don't live that way from day to day. On the contrary, they actively seek certainty and stability. They want to know that they will be safe. So people seek certainty and stability and not change. This is what the author says. Again, the same repetition. Even so, we scare ourselves constantly with the idea of change. An IBM CEO once said, we only restructure for a good reason. And if we haven't restructured in a while, that's a good reason. We are scared that competitors, technology, and the consumer will put it out of business. But if we asked our forefathers and grandfathers, would they have said that they lived in a period of little change? Structure may not have changed much. It may the speed with which we have. Again, he's repeating the same thing that, structure has not changed. The speed with which we do things has changed. Nothing else has changed. So change is not happening, it is just blown out of proportion. This entire, almost 200-250 word essay is just highlighting one thing. And that is tribalism holds people from accepting changes. And humans, they talk about changes, but they actually seek certainty and stability. That's it. One of the things that you have to keep in mind, people, while reading is that writers often repeat information unnecessarily. You must be smart enough to quickly run through the sentences and say, okay, this is just a repetition. And can I say that in these 3 paragraphs, the same thing is getting repeated time and again? And that's why you can run through the sentences saying that this is precisely. One more thing, people, you have to keep in mind is, apart from summarizing and focusing on what is coming in the passage, you have to always look for that point when the author steps in. So if at all you have to slow down, understand this, people, if at all you have to slow down while reading, it is where the author steps in. Now you might wonder, what do you mean by the author stepping in? When I say the author steps in, it means basically the author has come in and he is trying to give some kind of opinion. And that is where his opinion should matter the most to us. Because this is precisely, he's trying to give some information to us. Okay, for example, let's have a look at this. Look at this now. I will read this paragraph, okay? In Forces of Production, David Noble examines the transformation of the machine tool industry. Okay, so this is a book. And David Noble talks about this book. That means David Noble is the writer. Okay, fine. Noble writes from a Marxist perspective. And his argument is that management conspired against labor. So basically, the author introduces a book by David Noble and has said what Noble has done in the book. What has Noble done? Noble writes from a Marxist perspective, saying that management has conspired against labor. Who says this? Noble in his book. And the author says Noble fails to substantiate this claim. Now, this is where the author steps in. This is very important for me. This is the first time the author has come in and said something of his own. And therefore, I would say that this is a very critical information. And what is it? That Noble fails to substantiate this claim. What is the claim? That management conspired against labor. Although his argument is impressive. So from this, I get to know that the author is writing about Noble and his book, but the author is having a negative attitude somewhat. Although his argument is impressive, Noble has failed to substantiate this claim. In automating, the industry moved from this to that. Okay, fine. So whatever it is. What is the gist of this entire paragraph? That Mr. David Noble wrote a book, and in that book, he argues from Marxist perspective, but saying that the management has conspired against labor, but he has failed to substantiate that claim. This is precisely what is happening in the entire paragraph. People, this is how you're going to, you would be able to skim through the passage, get the broad idea, go quickly to the question and see what kind of question the author is expecting from, what kind of question has come in the passage, and then you can come back. And then depending on whether the question asks you specific information, whether the question is about tone, whether the question is about central idea, whether the question is about specific think from the passage, from second paragraph, third paragraph. Accordingly, you can then come back to the passage and check for the answer using your option elimination to find the best choice. So in every case, I am just showing you what is important for me. And you agree with me. A book by David Noble speaks about something. And so what is more important here? You know what is more important here? David Noble writes a book and he's writing from Marxist perspective. The central argument is more important. This is more important rather than saying that the examination of this, whether David Noble is examining X or Y, that is not important, but David Noble's central argument is more important. That is what a good reader does. He knows, but sir, he says positive about the author. But again, the main idea has come here. Noble fails. Although you are good, although you have good aptitude, you're good for nothing. So the focus of the sentence is always the main clause. That is the reason what I have been, stressing on grammar all the while. Do you think that this is more important, although is more important, or this is more important? If you say that this is important, then you don't know anything about English grammar. Although is not as important as this is important. So the focus, the weight of the sentence is on Noble fails to substantiate this claim. Although you have worked hard, you are not qualified for the exam. That's it. So the final result is you're not qualified. You might have worked hard, you might have done this, you might miss sympathy. So you must understand where is the greater weight lying. Don't take it as everything is X and Y here, absolutely going literally. Otherwise, you will never be able to improve your reading habit. I hope this is clear to you. I will go to the reason I'm only giving you examples, people. I'm just trying to tell you that you have to summarize, you have to focus on the important ideas, you have to know where the author is stepping in. These are some of the things you must do while reading the passage. Now look at this. This is very important. Keep an eye on transition words. A useful indicator of significant shifts in reading comprehension passages is the use of words such as however, nevertheless, on the other hand, by contrast, yet. If you pay close attention to these sorts of signals, they will help you orient to what are the significant parts of the passage. And they will alert you to when a significant shift is happening in the passage. Incidentally, authors often provide helpful signals to continuity as well as shifts. For example, what is the example? By the same token, what is the same token? Furthermore, what is being added? In the same way, what is being added? Moreover, similarly, and others. So these are all adding information. So that means similar ideas are going to come, so you can increase the speed. If I'm talking positive about something and then I use the word furthermore, that means I'm adding one more positivity. So no problem, rush through these sentences. There is no need for you to wait. Why? More positive is being added, no problem. So you can increase the speed of your reading, focusing on the broader idea. We'll take one example here, and that will clear the picture. Now, this is one paragraph. I have taken it from one of the RCs here. And look how the author has used all those contrasting words. He says improvements in crop yields through the application of something suggest that agriculture could benefit from the use of bacteria. Now, what is the key idea here? If I'm reading this sentence, the key idea here is that agriculture could benefit from what? The use of bacteria. Genetically altered bacteria. This is the main idea. Agriculture could benefit from the use of genetically altered bacteria. This is where I should focus. And then he gives example. That means he's giving example of what? Example of how agriculture could benefit. Simple. He is giving example of how agriculture could benefit. And then he says, yes, so that means example. So I did not bother much about it and get into the very details. It says here, for example, a form of phytopathogen altered can be released into environment conditions able to its okay, so some good is coming out of it. Some experiments suggest that the deliberately releasing of altered pathogens could crowd out the non-altered variety, cause frost damage. Opponents of such research, so again here, opponents have come into picture. So this is basically the benefits of bacteria genetically altered. What are the agriculture benefits? But the opponents have come here and they have objected the deliberate and large-scale release of genetically altered bacteria might have harmful results. Proponents, on the other hand, argue that means this whole paragraph is about what? Agriculture, how agriculture could benefit from the genetically altered bacteria. There is one benefit the author has spoken here at the start. There are opponents who have some kind of, reservation. The proponents, on the other hand, argued that this particular strain is altered only by the removal. So some technical thing is being discussed, but what is the broad idea? The broad idea is that genetically altered bacteria can benefit agriculture. This is the way. Here there are proponents who support it, and there are opponents who are basically finding flaws in it. No problem, I will come to it later on and check what exactly is the discussion here. But let me go to the next paragraph. So there is a debate, right? So the whole idea is, rather than getting too much into the technicality in the first reading, I will not focus much on it. I would simply say, okay, fine, the proponents have one stand and the opponents have the other stand. There is no unanimity over it. That is more important. There is no unanimity. There are disagreements, and what the disagreements are over what? Are over the genetically, or basically the use of genetically altered bacteria. This is basically the whole issue. Why they are disagreeing? What is the logic? Let's not bother about it. We'll come back to that later on when we see the question. Some proponents have gone further and suggest that, so they have gone further means they have added something here. So the proponents say that, there is some safety here, and they have gone further and suggest that genetic alteration techniques could create organisms with totally new combinations of desirable traits. And then again, for example, genes responsible for production of insecticidal compounds have been transposed. So this is basically how the benefits can come as per the proponents. Experiments of this kind are difficult and require great care. Such bacteria are developed in highly artificial environments. So this is basically about a specific example which the author has taken, and the proponents are basically trying. Nevertheless, proponents contend that the prospects for improved agriculture through such methods seem excellent. So in spite of this negative difficulty, the proponents feel that the prospects are excellent. These prospects lead many to hope that current efforts to assess the risks of deliberate release of altered microorganisms will successfully answer the concerns of opponents. Fine. So again, too much of technicality. What is happening in the paragraph? That there is genetically altered bacteria. Proponents are in favor of its use because it might benefit them. The opponents are basically worried about the deleterious results. So this is how I am trying to gather the critical information. What kind of experimentation, what is happening, what is the overall this? We can come to that later on, people. I mean, anyways, we are going to read the question, right? And we'll have to anyways come back to the passage to find the answers. In the rarest of the rare cases, we will mark the answer without coming back to the passage. So if anyways I want to come back again to the passage, I will do the detailing once I come back again. In the first reading, I will simply try to find the broader outline. That way, people, you would be able to spend more time on the question. Always focus on the umbrella terms. The genetically altered bacteria's benefits is important. The examples have been given. There could be 10 different examples. But the primary reason is what? How to basically get the benefit of genetically altered bacteria. In what way it is done and what are the different techniques that it might be done. We can come to the question later on and then we will answer it. Now let's go to the next slide. It says that increase your speed when you come across repetitive information. Look at this, repetitive information. Now why should you increase your speed? As I showed you earlier in the passage of the anthropologist who says that tribalism is responsible for holding back changes. Increase your speed when you come across repetitive. This is very important. Look at this. This is again a CAT passage. Modern bourgeois society, said Nietzsche, was decadent and enfeebled. Okay. Modern society was decadent and enfeebled. A victim of what? Excessive development of the rational faculties. Against the liberal rationalist stress of the intellect, Nietzsche urged recognition of the dark, mysterious world of desires, the true forces of life. So what is happening here in the paragraph? Nietzsche says that modern society was decadent because of development of rational faculties at the expense of will. That means what? Nietzsche favors will and instinct and not rational faculty. And he's repeating the same thing again and again. Nietzsche urged recognition of instinctual desires. Nietzsche urged recognition of instinctual desires. It is as good as We are focusing too much on the rational faculties at the expense of will and instinct. Smother the will and you destroy the spontaneity that sparks cultural creativity, ignites the zest of living. So again, if you smother the will, you kill yourself. The critical and theoretical outlook destroys creative. Again, you are repeating the same thing. You are saying that rationality destroys your instinctual capability to live life. That's it. And therefore, Nisha says that you have to shun what? Intellectuality, and you have to focus more on the will and the instinct. That's it. They are just repeating the information, nothing else. So once you know how to sift information, how to basically filter information, you will become a good reader. Eventually, all writers agree that half of what they write is meaningless, but they write so that the other half reaches you. So while reading, why don't you simply pick the other half? Why should you unnecessarily focus on the first half, which is basically nothing but nonsense? People, this will come by practice. You have to just keep on doing this, and you will realize that there is, there's a grain of truth here. Now, if you go to the next one, it says here, there's one more example here. Example of repetitive information. The skeptic requires evidence and reasons for hypothesis or belief before it is accepted. Always open to inquiry, skeptical inquirers are prepared to change their belief in the light of new evidence. They will not accept appeals to authority or faith. They are willing to suspend judgment about question for which there is insufficient evidence. They are willing to change in the light of new evidence. That means basically what? Skeptics are open to inquiry. They are willing to change in the light of new evidence. They don't bow to authority. I mean, you know the meaning of the word skeptic, right? Skeptic means what? The one who is basically doubting everything, and he goes by evidence. That's it. The whole paragraph is unnecessarily repeating the same thing again in different words. Should you read it with great care? At least the first reading? No, not required. They are simply repeating the same thing again and again. That skeptics require evidence. They are prepared to change in the light of evidence. They will not accept to authority. They are willing to change for which there is insufficient evidence. All the time, the same word evidence has come almost 4 times. And what is the author trying to say? That they are not willing to change. They will change only when there is evidence. They will not change when there is insufficient. I mean, come on, stop it now. The fact is that skeptics, they change their opinions based on evidence and not based on belief or authority. That's it. A good reader would immediately pick that all kinds of nonsense is being talked about. Let's rush through the passage quickly. People, it's up to you to decide whether this information is necessary or unnecessary. And that is where grammar and a proper reading habit plays a very, very important role. Because that guides you intuitively, telling you that this is necessary information and that is not necessary information. And look at now, this is the last slide I have. Important points that you have to remember. So we have given a good deal of time to simply this exercise. While reading the passage for the first time, focus on the broad issues. Make a mental map of how the information, data, or arguments are spread in the passage. I mean, a good example would be that the author has discussed the 3 different ways of overcoming diabetes. In the first paragraph, he discusses the first way. In this second paragraph, he discusses the second way. In the third, he is evaluating the pros and the cons. And the fourth way, he is giving his own judgment. Okay, this is the structure. So when the author comes to giving his own judgment, I will find it in the 4th paragraph. So if there is a question which is focusing on the author's opinion, I will come to the 4th paragraph and check where exactly is the answer hidden. That is what we mean by, having what? A mental map. If you want to go to your friend's place, there is no need for you to, need to know every tree and square that is on your way. You have to simply know the broader map, and the broader map will take you to his place. Same is the case with reading. You should know the broader map. No need to understand each and every word in the passage. Spend more time on the questions, and this is possible, people, only when you are spending lesser time on the paragraph. There are people who take 7 to 8 minutes reading the paragraph. And don't forget, people, use options effectively to arrive at the answers. Elimination is the biggest tool and the most important technique. You have the options after all, right? So we can use the options to check. Some of these might go out because they don't agree with the central idea of the passage. So you can use this broad understanding, and then you can use where exactly the question has come from, where the information must be lying, and then you can start with the comparison and the analysis part. At least you will have more time to focus on the questions. So this is broadly speaking what I have been trying to say, that you have to become a better reader. The first reading has to be always on the yes, that's what I have said. I have said here, make a mental map, spend more time on the questions. So when you come to the question, of course you will have to be careful. The question is inference, and then you have to go to the passage, then you have to carefully. The point is that if you read keeping the broad issues in mind, you will have more time to spend on the questions, and therefore you are more likely to get the questions correct because you're spending more time on the question. When it comes to the question, you will definitely have to spend more time on the question. I mean, I don't say that the question can be done through correctly, but the first reading can always be done with this kind of, again, this is just an indicative thing. I'm not saying this is the rule here, but this is how you must do the job. So people, almost, it has been 1 hour. I have been repeatedly speaking. I have been highlighting, and so you have to keep this in mind. People see you have to practice as much as possible. People, verbal VARC means there has to be a depth in your study. There has to be deeper analysis, deeper understanding. The deeper you go into things, the more you will. The more the clarity would be there about those things. So simply solving 500, 800 passages is going to do no good to you if you're doing them in the same way without any analysis. But if you do that with proper analysis, with just try to do this, you will gradually definitely improve. You'll start getting the bigger picture gradually, and your reading speed will automatically increase, and then you would be able to. Okay, people, so start implementing these techniques, and I will give a schedule for the sessions that I would be taking in the evening, so that you can just orient yourself. And most of these sessions would be in the evening only, so it's the final this. Okay, and we'll have the workshops as well. Yes, I will share this on the group. Okay.